it was worth an estimated $165 million over a 30-year period.
From these digital warehouses estimated to cost $600 million apiece flows a stream of data. Here are the emails, the photographs, the music, the videos, the maps, and the searches that have made Google a data collecting powerhouse. Google does not divulge how many server farms it runs worldwide, but it is rumored that there are some 36 of them around the globe, all digitally connected and all firmly planted on land. But that might change. Google has filed a patent to build data centers out on the open sea. Powered by the latest technologies in harnessing wave energy, Google's servers would sit out on barges. The expectation is that sea-bound servers would be much cheaper to run, and there certainly wouldn't be any real estate or property taxes to pay. A working model has yet to be built, but Google is a corporation that likes to move quickly when cutting-edge technology is involved. However, Google took its time when it came to opening up an office in China. The growth in internet usage in China is staggering. By 2009, its internet users surpassed the entire population of the United States. It is an exploding market made more complex by a censorious government.
We were late in entering China. We were late because we were concerned about some of their content laws.
In order for Google to set up an office in China, it had to agree to block certain sites from its search results. The Chinese government decides who gets past their Chinese firewall. To run Google in China, they landed Kai-Fu Lee, a senior executive at Microsoft, who was once in charge of their operations in China. In 2005, Kai-Fu Lee found himself in the role of Noogler, as new Googlers are called.
When I joined Google, I used the word shock to describe what I felt I saw. And I think it's a combination of things. It's a combination of the Google values, and that's just how young and happy this company was. It's my goal to make the culture in the Google China office as close as possible to that of Google Mountain View office. It's impossible to make it exactly the same because the Chinese culture and the American cultures are different.
Nothing separates these two cultures more than who is actually using the internet.
The average internet user is 25 years old in China versus about 42 in the United States. So the difference is substantial, and the usage patterns is also quite different. The Chinese users, because they're younger, tend to like entertainment, games, music, video, tend to do less of searching and e-commerce. Similarly, when they use the web, they tend to want something that's very busy, very exciting, as opposed to simple user interfaces.
The internet cafes are filled with young people, many of whom are here because at home they would be forbidden to play these games and movies. What it seems is not forbidden either here or at home is downloading pirated music.
We noticed that most Chinese users on the internet download pirated or unlicensed music through other search engines. And that's become a habit, and I think most users find that to be an entitlement. So our efforts to try to build perhaps a paid per download or even a subscription service ended up with a clear conclusion they would never take off.
A Google engineer and a product manager used their 20% time to come up with Google Music, a free music download that has the support of the major record labels.
So we hope we found the formula that will not only be successful, popular, but also profitable for record labels and for our partner and for us.
While the Chinese government appears to tolerate the pirating of music, it seems to show less patience for Google, recently accusing it of spreading pornography.
Google is registered in China, so we have to follow the Chinese laws.
Whatever the laws are.
Well, our employees are Chinese citizens. They would have to follow the Chinese laws wherever they work.
Following Chinese laws meant that Google searches from within China for such things as Falun Gong, Tibet independence, or Tiananmen Square protest produced quite different results from those that appear on screens outside of China. And that's how it operated for 4 years. When in January 2010, Google announced that it would stop censoring its search results due to a major cyber attack originating in China, targeting Google's intellectual property and the Gmail accounts of Chinese human rights activists. While China insists that its laws must be obeyed, Google warned that if discussions with the Chinese government to operate an unfiltered search engine prove unsuccessful, it could shut down operations in China. However, there were no discussions with the government of the United States when shortly after September 11, 2001, it passed legislation that gave itself broad surveillance authority, allowing itself unprecedented access to people's digital footprint.
And these powers are quite broad now. They range from getting access to credit reports on individuals, to getting access to their communications data, to more broadly being able to send a letter to any data holder and say, please reveal all the information you have about this person and don't tell them. And don't tell anyone. This is the idea of the National Security Letter.
At the Electronic Privacy Information Center in Washington, D.C., Director Mark Rottenberg is concerned about the new digital information that's migrating to the clouds of computer server farms.
I'm not saying that the government shouldn't get access to that information under appropriate circumstances. In fact, in some instances, it's vital to pursue wrongdoing and criminal investigations. But we need oversight, we need accountability, we need transparency. And the problem with cloud computing is it's going to make it much easier for government to engage in this type of surveillance secretly without people knowing that their personal information, their business records are being turned over.
I've asked people at Google to simply report statistics on how many subpoenas and warrants they get every month. They don't have to say anything else. They don't have to say what those subpoenas and warrants were about. Just a number. How many do you receive? But they didn't like that suggestion and rejected it out of hand.
As the Google juggernaut plows ahead, digitizing everything in its path, it accumulates new adherents. The city of Washington, D.C. has opted to wean itself off Microsoft Office and switch to a collection of Google applications. Google's offer of a cheaper, more secure, and more collaborative life in their cloud proved just too enticing to turn down.
The trust issue is central to our whole brand. If Google were to violate someone's trust, the press, of course, would kill us, and all of a sudden people would withhold their information, they'd stop searching, our revenue would go down, it'd be a terrible thing, terrible for our company, terrible for them. So we take it very, very seriously.
Some people don't trust this naive altruism that, we're really trying to make products that make users better. They see, some sort of agenda that we're trying to, control the world or whatever they see. But what can I say? We come out of a grad school background and we don't think like that.
But Google also has to worry about a band of young upstarts ready to change the world of search. Discarding Google's original model of a data-crunching search engine, they are approaching search from a different angle. They want to harness the power of what was known as the wisdom of friends.
I think that this is the place that is going to define the next several years of what the internet and world is really about.
So why is it that some of the leading proponents of social search are ex-Googlers ready and willing to challenge their ex-employer? With almost 20,000 employees worldwide, Google is beginning to see some of its early hires leaving for what they see as the next big thing. In a down-market district of San Francisco, an internet startup has an abundance of Google corporate DNA. Several of its founders are ex-Googlers. But their company, Aardvark, wants to go beyond Google and transform search itself.
We like to call it social search. It's the notion of you're really searching for the right person. in the moment. And it's not that you want to know their bio, it's that you really want to interact with them because they know something that will help you in your moment. Sometimes it's not really written down on a web page, but someone out there really does know the answer. And we all have social networks. Aardvark is basically a utility that lets you tap into that.
Just down the highway, in a nondescript industrial mall in Silicon Valley, there is another social network startup with its own list of very impressive ex-Googlers, including Paul Buchheit, who so famously, or perhaps infamously, coined Google's motto, "Don't be evil." Their tiny company called FriendFeed is developing a new social network service that shares and keeps track of what friends are listening to, reading, and posting on the web.
None of us really knows what's going to happen next. But in many ways, I find that that's actually part of the fun of a startup. You know, at a big company, I can pretty easily predict what's going to happen next year. At a startup, you have no idea what's going to happen next. You know, next year could be a huge success or it could be a huge failure.
Google had been eyeing FriendFeed for possible acquisition. But before FriendFeed could even reach its second year in business, it was gobbled up by social network phenomenon Facebook for a reported $50 million. Facebook, founded by a Harvard dropout in 2004, has undergone an explosive growth and represents a real challenge to Google, at the same time attracting a surprising number of ex-Googlers.
I think leaving Google is, and choosing to come to Facebook just demonstrates how compelled and convinced I am about the importance of Facebook's mission.
Facebook, along with Twitter, are currently the hottest social networks around, and they have realized that their kind of friend-based recommendations is a form of search far removed from Google's cold, calculating algorithms.
For most people, outside of engineering, the world is about relationships. It's about connecting with other people. And to that extent, Facebook really is that next step in the evolution of what really matters from a technology perspective.
Google had in fact entered the social network market with something called Orkut. Although tremendously popular in India and South America, it has failed to attract any large following among Europeans and North Americans.
Google really didn't jump into the social networking business, and I think that's partly the personality of the founders. I think they're engineers who, small talk with your friends is not the priority. It's getting information from the scientific world is priority. So I think in some sense there was always a bias that this was sort of not very interesting, not very important. Why would you want to spend time on it? And of course, as the world has moved to Facebook and Twitter and all those things, they've said, oh, we can do that technically too. Sure, we can put Twitter-like things into Gmail. We can put Facebook-like things. We have Orkut. But I think the heart of the company isn't in it. It's not what the company's about. It's about information, all the world's information.
Google really believes that the data is going to create incredible benefit for society. The company firmly believes that it's going to find ways to use data to make our lives better, to make our lives easier, to make decisions more efficient. They firmly believe that. For instance, with flu trends, they believe that in tracking individual searches for looking for things like cough or other medical conditions, they are going to detect the flu, they are going to be able to more effectively target interventions, and fewer people will die.
When Google launched its IPO, Larry and Sergey personally wrote a letter explaining their aspiration for its future. Google is not a conventional company, they wrote. We do not intend to become one. Google's mission to collect all the world's information and make it accessible and useful, and do it within 300 years, has seen it move far beyond searching internet sites. Whether photographing streets, or digitizing the world's books, or turning our mobile devices into internet portals, or creating the world's greatest repository of video in its very own cloud, Google remains a technological phenomenon. But its future rests on something quite unscientific. Trust. Trust that it is keeping our data safe from hackers and snooping governments. Trust that it isn't misusing our information. And ultimately trust that Google is living up to its own. Don't be evil.
If I ruled the world, there'd be happiness that no man could end.